And I hope that by the end of this webinar, you'll have most of the information you need to get started with using Google Optimize. So just wanted to let everyone know that the recording will be available afterwards, and we will be sending it out along with the slides. So if that is a question that you have, we'll definitely be sharing this afterwards. We will have time for questions at the end, so you can use the questions panel in the GoToWebinar feature, and I'll try to get to all of those, maybe at the end or possibly as I'm going through the presentation. I'll also be providing my contact info at the end for anyone that may have questions in addition to any questions you get to during the webinar. Feel free to reach out to me a little bit later as well by email. But that being said, let's go ahead and get started and talk more about getting started with Google Optimize. So a little bit about me and a little bit about InfoTrust. My name again is Melanie Bowles, and I'm an optimization and insight specialist with InfoTrust. I work with some of the largest brands in the world to define and execute experimentation strategies, and frequently work with the Google marketing platform, which of course Google Optimize is a part of. InfoTrust is an independent analytics consultancy and product development company. We're Google partners, headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, but we also have offices in Chicago, Barcelona, and Dubai. We offer a full stack of services from data compliance and security, digital architecture and integration, technical implementation and support, reporting and insights, as well as digital analytics, strategy, and data science. So in terms of our approach, we build our own products. Some of you may have heard of Tag Inspector, which is a proprietary tag auditing and monitoring platform. In terms of our experience, we work with over 25 Fortune 500 companies and support and manage over 6,000 websites per year. Again, global support with our multiple offices throughout the world, and we're TMS agnostic. We're trained and experienced across multiple tag management systems. And since ROI is our top priority, no plans to sell you media. Of course, we're trusted advisors with a 94% customer retention rate and dedicated support. So I'll share this information at the end as well, but we also have some other upcoming events and webinars. We're offering a data governance workshop, and this is an in-person event. If you're in Cincinnati, Chicago, or New York, feel free to go to that link or go to our website to get more information if data governance is a concern for your organization. We have a couple of other webinars coming up for understanding your customer journey with Google Analytics 360 and Google Cloud for marketers and creating a single view for media effectiveness. Today, we'll be covering a number of things. We'll talk about the difference between Optimize and Optimize 360, how to install Optimize, what the different options are there, actually creating experiences, including experiments and personalizations in Google Optimize, targeting options, setting up objectives, and how to understand and interpret the results that you get in Optimize. So let's start just talking a little bit about Optimize versus Optimize 360. I will also point out some of the differences as I go through this presentation, but overall, in terms of the testing capabilities, both the free and the 360 version have the same options in terms of having an ABN capability, a multivariate, and a redirect testing option. Also, the personalization options are available for both versions. In terms of simultaneous experiments, that's a place where the free versus enterprise version varies. So with the free version, you're limited to 5 experiments at the same time. And with 360, of course, you can have multiple experiences above 5. For targeting, this is another place where there's a difference in terms of the two options. Both offer advanced targeting options, including geo-targeting, URL, and query targeting, AdWords, JavaScript, and data layer. But for Optimize 360, you also have advanced audience targeting options through the integration with Google Analytics audiences. So you can directly access those audiences that you have set up in your Google Analytics or Analytics 360 properties. For experiment objectives and reporting, for the free version, you're limited to pre-selected objectives, meaning at the beginning of the experiment, you have to choose the specific objectives, and those are the only objectives that you'll receive the reporting for. And with the 360 version, you have the ability to select additional objectives for reporting even after the experiment begins to get that full statistical analysis. Product SLAs and support. With the 360, of course, you get the full product SLAs, dedicated account management, and technical support that you normally would have with a partner. Again, I will kind of revisit some of these differences and features throughout the presentation. So now we're going to talk about how to really just get Optimize installed on your site. So there's, the first step is really to just create an account in Optimize. You create a new account, just go to the Optimize website. You link to your Google Analytics property that you're going to be using with Google Optimize. You do have the option to select multiple views. So once you have linked a property, you would check off any views that are relevant to testing. And then lastly, install the Optimize Chrome extension if you plan on using the visual editor. And we'll talk a little more about the visual editor later, but if you plan on making changes to your variants directly within Google Optimize, you'll need to use Google Chrome and you'll need to have that extension. You don't have to have the extension if you just plan on viewing results of experiments, but if you are going to be responsible for building those experiments or variants, you do need to install that. So in terms of the technical implementation of Optimize, once you have created that Optimize account and property, or in container, and the property has been set up and linked to Google Analytics, you can choose one of the methods of installation. So you can either use a global site tag or G tag, or Google Tag Manager. So if you use the G tag, it's a relatively simple process. When you log into Optimize and click install Google Optimize, you'll get a snippet that you can use. So you just copy that snippet, similar to what you would do with the tag management system like Google Tag Manager, and you implement that G tag snippet throughout your site. If you choose to implement Optimize using Google Tag Manager, there's already a template tag in Google Tag Manager that you can use. So you just select the Google Optimize tag type, enter your container ID that you get from Google Optimize, and then use a Google Analytics settings variable to pull in the settings from Google Analytics. So this is essentially, the options from Google Tag Manager, or you can use the G tag. If after installation you notice any issues with page flicker, you can also install the optional anti-flicker snippet to help mitigate this. So essentially similar to other formats of installation, you would copy this flicker, which is available to you and accessible pretty easily from within the Google Optimize interface, and make sure you install it on every page that Optimize is going to be used on. It also needs to be installed after any data layer declaration if you are using the data layer. And then you must ensure that the G tag or tag manager container immediately follows the anti-flicker snippet. So breezing right through into the really fun part of A/B testing, which is creating experiences. There's a number of options, but similar to to any A/B testing tool, essentially we're creating different variations of the site. In this case, because this product is directly integrated with Google Analytics, you can select your Google Analytics 360 goals as experiment objectives, or also Google Analytics events, and target your experiment to any audiences or any other type of audience targeting you want to use. Analyze your experiment results and deploy the winning variant for more optimal customer experiences. So we'll go through how all of this would work on Google Optimize. So Optimize offers 3 types of experiments. The A/B test, traditional ABN test, which is essentially comparing 2 or more versions of a web page to see which performs best. Google Optimize also has a redirect test option. So if, for instance, you want to make a big change to, say, a landing page or some other type of content or checkout page, for really big changes that you're completely redesigning an experience, you might want to consider a redirect test. And Google Optimize would handle deploying your traffic to separate URLs. In addition to a redirect or A/B test, multivariate tests are also an option, which would be, testing multiple combinations of elements on the same page to understand how improvements flow through those different combinations. The 4th type of experience that Google Optimize offers is a personalization. So essentially, within Google Optimize, you have the option to show individualized offers, product recommendations, or other content to your visitors based on any previous action that they've taken. So it could be, users that have, completed some activity on your site, users coming from a specific geographical area, or really any other data that you can think of to really personalize experiences and content. So this personalization is a really powerful way to engage with your visitors. For example, promoting seasonal clothing based on your visitors' geography, or offering free shipping to your best customers or customers that have added something to their cart. These are all really great applications for some of these personalization experiences. So actually creating experiences within Google Optimize is a pretty intuitive process. You simply click Create Experience and select from the experience option. So the 4 options that I just went over will all appear for you. So A/B test, multivariate test, redirect test, or personalization. So you simply select the option that you want to use for your experience, and then hit create. Once you create the experience, you'll just add and edit your variants, which you'll also do through the Google Optimize interface. If you choose to create a personalization, in addition to the way I showed previously, which is just simply click Create New Personalization, you can also create it 2 other ways. So while you're running an experiment, you could deploy any of your variants. Usually, of course, the leader from an experiment permanently as a personalization. So you could literally go into an experiment that you just ran and pick the clear winner and deploy that as a personalization on an ongoing basis on your site. You can also create a draft personalization from a variant. So if you already have a experiment running and you want to just go ahead and implement that variant as a personalization, you can do that directly from the test itself. So like I said before, if you choose to make your edits from within the Google Optimize interface, you can do that in the visual editor. The visual editor does require that plugin that I mentioned previously for Google Chrome in order to be able to make these site changes. So no matter which experience that you are implementing, whether it be an experiment or a personalization, you have the option to make these types of changes. So if you create a variant, you would click edit variant, or for personalization, you would click make site changes. And what would come up is kind of this drag and drop visual editor where you could select a number of items. You can edit HTML, you can edit CSS, and make the changes directly to the actual interface. So now that we've discussed actually just simply creating the experiences in Google Optimize, we'll talk about some of the targeting options that are available. So when you create your experience, you have the option to create both page-based targeting and audience-based targeting. The page targeting determines where the experience should run on your site. So you have to have at least one page targeting rule when you're setting up your experience. So essentially, it'll probably default to your home page, but you can always edit the URL that you are using. So you have the option to match on a number of different types of parameters. But essentially, you select the URL where this target should, or set of URLs where this experience should run. So audience targeting is where we get into really customizing who may see the experience. So there's a lot of options available here. Like I said before, if you are using Optimize 360, you do have the option to target Google Analytics audiences directly. If you don't have Optimize 360, this will be grayed out and this feature won't be available to you, but that is an option. If you have linked your Google Ads account, you can also target Google Ads by account, campaign, ad groups, and keywords, which is a great feature if you're doing any type of like customized landing page for your Google Ads campaigns. A popular and frequently used targeting rule is device category. So there's a lot of applications for this where you would want to only kind of test an experience that is changed on a mobile device versus the desktop device, since often a desktop experience is so different than mobile. So if you're making changes just to a mobile experience, you of course only want to target users that are coming through on a mobile device. So it's really easy to do. You just simply select from the drop-down menu the device categories that you want to target. Behavior targeting allows you to target users that are new versus returning, or users that are coming from specific referrers. So you could use that to target users that are coming from specific campaigns, even other than Google AdWords or Google Ads, and target users from those paid campaigns that you may be running. Geography, pretty self-explanatory, very similar interface to the device category targeting. You choose the type of geographic category that you want to narrow your audience down by, city, region, metro, country, and the type of match that you want to use for that. And then you can pretty much match, anything you can think of, very similar to what you would see in Google Analytics in terms of that geography interface. Technology, also similar to device category, you can target visitors using a specific device, browser, or operating system. Google Optimize also offers a number of advanced audience targeting options. So a query parameter targeting would be something like, targeting users who execute a specific search in your search bar. So if you wanted to maybe run a personalization for users who are searching for, a kitchen item and show them later, suggested products based on their previous search. Data layer variable, which is very important and very heavily used feature in Google Optimize. All of your data layer variables are available for targeting in Google Optimize. So if that is something that you're utilizing, it really widens the capabilities of your testing and targeting. JavaScript variable, if you are not using the data layer, or even if you are and there's some type of variable that you want to scrape from your source, you can use custom JavaScript variables as well to target users. If you have a specific first-party cookie, that is an option as well. And then, of course, custom JavaScript for those really advanced targeting rules that you want to set up by running your own custom code. So a lot of options for the audience targeting here. And I'm just going to check really quick. Okay, so next we're going to talk about setting up objectives. And because this integrates directly with Google Analytics, this is a very intuitive setup process here. Based on the property and the view that you link to your experience, you automatically have all of your Google Analytics goals directly imported into Google Optimize. So there's two options, or two categories of options for setting up your test KPIs. So you can either choose system objectives or Google Analytics goals, and these are the ones where it would say choose from a list, or you can create custom objectives, which I'll show examples of all of these. So these system objectives are available in any test. So they're common built-in objectives that are frequently used in experiments. So bounces, page views, transactions, revenue, and session duration, those are going to be available as objectives no matter what. So those are the built-in objectives. Google Analytics goals. So whatever view that you have linked to your experiment, those are the goals that you're going to have accessible to you. So these are automatically imported. You simply click on the objectives that are relevant to your experiment, and then those will be the objectives for your test. So this part is really simple. Not a lot of no additional setup here to set those up as your goals. And then custom objectives allow you to further customize the objectives for your test. So you can either set up specific events or like a destination goal or similar to a goal. So if you have custom event tracking that's set up in Google Analytics, you can use the events custom objective type to target a specific event category, action label, or value, or all of the above. So pretty much anything that you have set up as an event is also accessible to you in Google Optimize for a custom objective. Similarly, if a objective of your test is to reach a specific page or destination, you can also select the page view option for objectives and set that as an objective as well. So if there's a confirmation page for an email sign up, or even if you have a confirmation page for a transaction, all of that can be set up as a custom objective for your test. And similar to what you would see when you're setting up goals in Google Analytics, there's this rule validation here. So once you set it up, you can kind of just double check to make sure that it's a valid syntax and it's a valid event, which it does autocomplete, by the way. But it'll tell you based on the last 7 days of data in the linked analytics view, how often that rule happens. So we've gone through all of the steps to set up a test or experience or personalization in Google Optimize. So once you've completed all those steps where you've created the experience, you've implemented the targeting and the objectives for the test, you can start the experiment or you can schedule the experiment. So the scheduling feature is a great feature to kind of time these tests that you're running, especially if you have a specific date and time that an experience needs to run. So for instance, if you're running a special campaign in Google Ads and you have a specific landing page that is relevant to that campaign only during a certain time period, you can schedule your experience to start and even end at a specific date and time of day. So, and you don't have to select both. You could select just the start time or just an end time. And this is a good feature to make sure that you don't forget to end an experience that's no longer relevant, or to make sure that you start it at the beginning of the day, or midnight, or whatever you decide the best time to start your experience is. So now we'll talk through how to understand the results and a little bit of the methodology used with Google Optimize, because I know this is a frequent question, especially if you've ever used another A/B testing tool. And I'm not going to get super into the statistics of it, but essentially Optimize uses Bayesian inference to generate predicted outcomes, as opposed to the frequentist-based analysis that many other testing tools use. So essentially, in as layman terms as I can, this is based on a degree of belief that's expressed as a probability, which I'll show how that's expressed in Google Optimize, that should rationally change to account for availability of related evidence. So essentially, Optimize is using existing data to make better assumptions about new data. And as it collects this new data, the model is refined and it's producing more accurate results. So it's a data-driven model that is using all of the available data that it has to make a prediction for outcomes. So some of the models that may be used in combination with this method would be a hierarchical model, and essentially an example of this would be if an experiment has significant newness effects that may wear off over time. This type of model would compensate for this because obviously the first time a user sees a change, it may have a bigger impact than the next time they see it. So the models do account for that type of behavior. A contextual model accounts for experiment and user context. So if new users behave differently from returning users and they're not excluded from the group if you're targeting, that information is incorporated into the overall results to give you a more accurate final outcome for predictions. And then finally, restless models. These are all just examples of some of the data-driven models that are incorporated in Google Optimize. So a restless model, for example, would be if conversion rates on the weekend are much different from conversion rates on weekdays. Those effects are accounted for with a restless model and not just directly averaged in. So all of these kind of additional data points are accounted for with this type of model. And that's the calculation that would the basis of this type of model. So the chance evidence is real, which supports the hypothesis that the chance of a true positive among all positives. So that's just a little background about the methodology. But when you read the reports, I promise they're a lot simpler than that to understand. But to view the results of a running or concluded experiment, you just simply click the reporting tab at the top of the experiment detail page. And they're broken into three types of reports, which is summary card, which is very simple to read, an improvement overview card, and an objective detail card. So you can get as detailed as you want in terms of really drilling down into those results. So when you're looking at the summary card, for example, it displays experiment status and a summary of the results for the primary objective. So if you set the primary objective as transactions or revenue, that summary card is going to focus primarily on that main objective of your test. So when you're looking at this and you see improvement, improvement is a likely range in which your conversion rates will fall. So as I already discussed, it uses Bayesian analysis to determine how the variants will perform in the future. And it's similar, it's not the same, but it's kind of the equivalent of a confidence interval. So you'll see those intervals, which I'll show an example of that as well, where you can see the median and see that full range. Probability to be best is the probability that a given variant performs better than all other variants. So if you have more than one variant, this will give you the probability that any one of those variants will be better than the other variants and the original. Probability to beat baseline is a probability that any of the variants that you may have set up will result in a conversion rate better than the original conversion rate. So, and again, from the like the summary card, we're just talking mostly about the primary objective for the test. An experiment session is any session where the experiment executed and all future sessions for that user while the experiment is running, even if they didn't see the experiment or really the variant. So even if they saw the original, obviously those users are still included in the experiment session. This is just a clearer picture, I guess, of the summary card. So if you do run a test that has a clear leader, you'll see something like this. It'll tell you the name of the variant, the range of improvement, the probability to be best, and the probability to beat baseline, which is essentially, again, just it means that the probability for this particular test is 97% that it'll be better than the original version. The improvement overview card compares the performance of the original to your variant or variants. So this shows you all of the objectives for your test. So under each variant, you can also see the number of experiment sessions to date, but pretty easy to scan if you have clear leaders and losers. So green values are objectives that perform clearly better than the original, and red values are objectives that perform clearly worse for a given objective. So, you know, in this example, you can kind of scan and see for page views that there was a clear winner for a particular variant, or a clear loser, and session duration, and we have also some clear losers and winners as well. So in this improvement overview card, you can just kind of see quickly an overview of how all of your variants performed for each of the objectives that you set when you set the test up. And then finally, the objectives detail card. This is where you can see a little bit of additional information in terms of those improvement ranges, and see, you know, kind of, you know, what's possible and how those objectives changed over time. So the colored areas in the graph represent the performance range that your original and variants are likely to fall into 95% of the time. So the line in the middle is the median value of the range. If you were in Google Optimize and you mouse over these ranges, you could also see the specific values. If you mouse over the graph, you can also see the specific values. So all of that information is available if you're interested in those ranges in more detail as well. Optimized data is also available in Google Analytics. So if you want to do some additional analysis and look at the actual conversion rates during the test, you can do that. We still would recommend doing most of your analysis in Google Optimize because those are the predicted outcomes. But the 3 experiment dimensions that are currently available in Google Analytics are experiment ID with variant, and experiment name. So you can utilize these dimensions to create, you know, some custom or advanced segments to do that additional analysis. So like I said, if you use, for example, experiment ID with variant, you could just go into analytics and find your experiment ID and select the variant. 0 is always the original, and then it increases incrementally from there. So if you had 3 variants, you would want to create a segment for, variant 0, 1, 2, and 3. So you can create those segments and add them to GA and compare and contrast what the observed conversion rates were during the test as well. So you have the observed conversion rates and the predicted conversion rates, just so you make sure you're not missing anything there in Google Analytics. So I covered a lot, talked about all of the features and the setup of Google Optimize. So I will open it up to questions, and I see that we have several questions in the Q&A panel. So I'm going to go ahead and read through those. So one of the questions that I see here is, what is your experience with Optimize, messing with the front-end code? How does it complement the CMS platform? For example, can you do personalization and targeting in some platforms itself? Okay, so I'll answer the first question. So in terms of the front-end code, I don't have any experience with it causing issues with the front-end code, but then again, I would always recommend testing any change you're going to make to the website if you do have a staging environment. So if you have a staging environment and you're making some major change to the site, definitely debug and test those variants before you launch it on production. That being said, if you do have a single page app, or your website is built on something like React or things like that, you have other options in terms of how to deploy your test. So didn't talk about it because it's a little bit more of an advanced topic, but you also have the option to trigger your experiments on activation events. So if you have some type of event set up in your data layer, you can also trigger those experiments on an activation event instead of a page view. So for those single page app type of situations, that's usually a better fit and a more consistent deployment for a lot of the testing that you might want to do. In terms of personalization and targeting in the platform itself, so Google Optimize, I mean, you can utilize anything that you can integrate with Google Optimize. So we've talked previously in other webinars that we've given about using a customer data platform. So if you're using something like that, there are opportunities for integrating that. Or if you're using Google Analytics audiences, that's another way for you to really customize your audience strategy and deploy that in a way that you can integrate it with Google Optimize. But it doesn't change anything in your CMS itself because it's an external tool. Will these slides be shared? Yes. We will definitely follow up with the slides, and the recording will also be available. Do you have any examples of clients who have drastically changed anything on their site after proving or disproving something with Optimize? So yes, I have tons of examples of that. One of the great things about A/B testing is sometimes you can prove or disprove an assumption that you've always held. So there's tons of blogs and YouTube videos and all types of anecdotal accounts of certain changes you can make to the site that quote unquote guarantee a boost in conversion. So Sometimes some of those things are true, but sometimes they're not. So the best way forward is to test before you implement something site-wide. So, I've seen situations where best practices that you would see for an industry are not always true on specific sites. So, for instance, if you are an e-commerce, if your site is an e-commerce site, there's a lot of things that work on some websites that may not work on yours. So in terms of minimizing CTAs on a checkout page or offering, using product recommendation carousels, things like that are all things you definitely want to test, because something that may work on one site may not work on your site. What types of sites do you see utilizing Optimize, and who should be using Optimize but may not be? So traditionally, I think that companies that are measuring the final conversion very well, like e-commerce sites, have historically used A/B testing the most, because obviously we can kind of predict what the lift will be in dollars. So e-commerce sites are definitely doing a lot of A/B testing, but I think that some of the sites that, or kind of business sectors that should be utilizing A/B testing and personalization, include consumer packaged goods. A lot of times, some of those sites don't have direct e-commerce. But you still want to ensure that you're doing everything you can to, keep users engaged and keep users flowing through the site to all of the touch points you want them to access. So if there's a email subscription that you want users to sign up for, if you want users to download coupons or share content, even if you don't do e-commerce on your site, you definitely want to consider doing some testing around getting users to move towards whatever the main conversion or the main conversion points are on your site. How do I get Optimize 360, and does my company have to have Analytics 360? So if you start off with the free version of Google Optimize and you find that it's working for your company and you like the features and you need to upgrade to use the additional features, you could reach out to, if you're already working with a Google marketing platform partner, or you can reach out to Google as well. But it's pretty easy to upgrade. You don't lose any data when you upgrade. So you can just use your existing Google Optimize free account or container and upgrade it. You actually do not have to have Analytics 360 to use Optimize 360. So it is possible to use one without the other. Well, like I said, these slides will be available, and we will also be posting the recording as well. But we'll follow up, after the webinar with that information. And also, if you are still online, there's a quick poll that should be popping up on your screen. If you're interested in scheduling a follow-up with InfoTrust to discuss Google Optimize in greater depth. You can also reach out to me directly if you have any questions. But thank you, everybody, for joining today. I hope that I've answered most of your questions about just kind of getting started with Google Optimize. It's a great tool, and definitely let us know if there's anything we can help you with Google Optimize.